Okay, so today we're going to be learning about Coptic verbs, how to conjugate them, and at the end I'm going to have some examples of how to conjugate verbs in the first perfect tense. So basically, with Coptic verbs, you have three different parts to them. You have the tense, the subject, and the verb itself. And so, first of all is the tense, which is a letter at the very beginning of a verb or like a verbal statement. That represents the tense of the verb, right? And so that'll just be a letter, except for as far as I'm aware, the present tense. Sometimes they drop the letter for that, but in most cases, for most tenses, there's going to be a letter in the very beginning that's telling you what tense the verb's taking place in, right? And tense is representing basically when or under what circumstance the verb is happening. So, like, is it past, present, future, conditional, subjective, stuff like that. Then, second's the subject, right? The subject's between the tense marker and the actual verb, and that's just describing who's performing the action. And in Coptic, that can be two different things. It can either take the form of a pronoun, in which case it's all together with the actual like verb, or it can take the form of a full word by itself. And so you'd see that the verb goes from being one word to being split up into three parts, with a space between the tense, subject, and the verb. And then finally is the actual verb itself, which is just going to be a root word for the verb. Okay, so first perfect tense in English, that's like its equivalent, is the simple past tense. And so some examples of that is like I saw, you spoke, he taught, stuff like that. And now getting into the actual like Coptic of it, right? First, let's go over some important letters that I think will be important not just for the verbs, but also for pronouns and stuff like that, right? So for verbs specifically, there are, or rather, sorry, uh, for first person masculine and feminine, they have two important letters, right? There's iota and there's alpha. And you got to know both of them because for verbs, what you want to know is iota, and for pronouns, what you want to know is alpha, right? And they're the exception. So first person singular, whether masculine or feminine, those are the exception. You need to know two different letters for that and when they're used. So iota for verbs, alpha for pronouns. Then first person plural, that's ne. For second person masculine, that's kappa. For second person feminine, that's e. For second person plural, that's iten. For third person masculine, that's phi. For third person feminine, that's sigma. And for third person plural, that's epsilon. Okay, so this is where you actually see the important letters in action here, right? So actually, the first perfect tense in Coptic here, we're going to be using the verb moshi or moshi, which would mean to walk. That's the infinitive version. And so first you have alpha, which shows the tense, like that's tense marker. And then in the middle, between alpha and moshi, you have the pronoun that you're going to be using if you use a pronoun, right? So for first person masculine, if you're saying uh, like I walked, what you would put is alpha, then iota, because whether you're masculine or feminine, it's going to be iota for first person, then moshi. So then altogether, that's going to be I moshi, because alpha and iota make I. So that's pretty easy to remember. Then that just continues through, and so really the only big exceptions from the important letters over here is second person feminine and plural, because in order to go from alpha to a vowel E, you actually have to have a consonant in between just so that flows better. And so that's why you find a rule right here for E and etin. So some examples of putting together different verbs. I moshi, which means I walked, because there's alpha and then yota. That doesn't matter whether masculine or feminine, still can be yota. Then moshi, so I walked. Bioweeb moshi. And so here you actually sidestep pronouns entirely, and you just put the word itself as a subject. And so what this would be is alpha, which is the verb tense, so this is past tense. Bioweeb, so the priest. Moshi, walked. So the priest walked. Then finally, us moshi. If we go back here, alpha, verb tense. Sima, that's going to be third person feminine, so she. And then moshi, which is walked. So us moshi is she walked. Then some other useful verbs to know, just like in everyday life. To eat is owom, to walk is moshi, to see is nav, to pray is ishlil, and to speak is saji. So if I were to say I spoke, it would be I saji. If I were to say you prayed, and I was talking to a guy, that would be ak. See, because the second person, masculine, ak ishlil, right? You prayed. And so yeah, that would basically be how you'd use them. You'd just replace moshi with any of these verbs, and using pronoun, you just put whatever fits in the blank, whatever fits for the subject that you're trying to talk about. Yeah, and that's basically it. Thanks for listening, and good luck.